obviously it's high school. So the first thing I like to start off my pregame is, Carl, I'm very excited to be working with you tonight. We have two great teams going after it tonight. And we have to be, give it our 100% effort here.
Right. This is 1 and 2 going for the final spot in the conference. So
exactly. So the first thing I like to say is, communicate, communicate, communicate. Verbal and nonverbal. A lot of eye contact. A lot of smiling. Not a lot of smiling, but let's act like we're enjoying the game. All right, and especially when we're going to report timeouts. All right, timeouts. I'll go to the table. I'll report my timeout. I'll turn to you. I will, let's point whether it's spot or running the end line. If it's free throws are involved and they want a timeout, I will turn to you first and say, Carl, do we have our shooter? And you'll put up blue 22 before I actually give the timeout. Go to the table, give the timeout, mechanics, turn to you again and say, Carl, who was our shooter? And then go to our spots on the floor. When there's a timeout, when the ball becomes dead, we become alive. And so it's not time for us to take off or daydream. It's time to, really watch the players, watch the benches, and keep an eye on everything.
Dead ball officiating, right? When the ball goes dead, we got to come alive. Exactly. 100% correct.
Exactly. In this game, in a two-person game, before we get to the point of emphasis, I like to, we'll talk about court positioning. In a two-person, I kind of like to divide the court in half. Not that is always the way it is, but in a two-person, when I'm trail and your lead, if the ball's coming from me and going to the basket, I like to take the ball all the way into the basket. Now, if I pass on something, by all means, come and get it if you see it. Okay?
Right.
Again, as the trail, if the ball is being passed above the free throw line extended, I will work the arc, as we call it. As it's going to the opposite side from me, going towards you, I will work the arc, moving onto the court, watching the ball. As soon as it's free throw line extended and then goes down to you, I will back out and go back to trail. Okay.
All right. Let's as far as you're saying, pretty much you're saying, let's just trust each other in our primary and let's be trustworthy in our primary.
Absolutely.
All right. As long as we're getting the obvious stuff tonight, then you know what, we'll be good. If a friend of mine told me when I first started officiating, don't go fishing in another man's pond unless you're coming out with a whale.
Exactly.
Right? Like, you and I have worked together many times. Egos are checked at the door. If there's something I miss, come get it. If there's something you miss and it's obvious, I'm gonna come get it.
Absolutely.
All right?
Yep.
So let's be trustworthy in our primaries. Let's own our 50% of the court, and as long as we're doing that, we should be good. But go ahead, continue on, Sheri.
That's all right. Also on court positioning again, as the lead, if the ball is strong side on your side, I may come over halfway inside the lane area on the end line.
Mm-hmm.
But I can guarantee you, I am not watching the ball, Carl. I am watching the other 6 players or the post players. And then when the ball gets kicked back, I will rotate back to my lead position. And if it's going down court, I will rotate back and we'll go down court. Okay.
I'll do the same. Okay. I'll do the same as the lead. If you have a competitive matchup up top and there's post play, I'll definitely rotate over and referee that post play. Just know if the ball does get kicked into that post, I'm going to take that matchup if I'm on that side.
Excellent.
All right. So you take everything else.
Okay.
If we have a shot, if we have a turnover or whatever happens and we're going down court, I will come back over to my side of the court.
Right.
I've done that in previous games that I've done. and may not have spoken about it with my partners, and I see my partner go cut across the court, which is not something that we need to do. So just know, if I come over strong side as the lead, I'm going to get my butt back over, to weak side when we're going back the other way.
Excellent. Good. Also important court positioning. When there's a full court press, as the new lead, I'll stay up at half court to kind of help you out in the beginning of that press. And then I will move down the court as the ball's coming up the court, and then take my position on the end line as the lead. So let's make
number 94.
Yep, absolutely. Let's talk about a point of emphasis. Ball handler, dribbler. We know hot stove touch, that's all they get. Anytime there's two hands, an arm bar, or alternating hands, that's a foul. All right, we've got to get that, because if we don't, that doesn't allow the offensive team to run their offense. And that's why that rule is put in there, is to allow that offense to run their plays and to score.
And just real quick, Sheri, I'm sorry to cut you off real quick.
Yeah.
I had the home team, and the home coach is going to be looking for that.
Okay.
He has a really good guard, and he likes to let her go. All right. So if we get those arm bars, those multiple touches, we got to put a whistle on it. He's usually quiet. He's pretty good. He'll ask questions. He'll talk to us. If we give him a direct and concise answer or good answer, he'll move on. But just understand, that's something that he's going to be looking for. So
okay, great, good.
Obviously, if we're calling on one end, we definitely need to call on the other.
Excellent. Okay, great. All right. We also have to watch the ball handler, dribbler driving to the basket, making sure that they don't extend their arm. All right, that's an offensive foul. So we have to make sure that we know the difference. Okay, so let's keep an eye out on that.
Right, who's creating the contact?
Exactly. Okay, rebounding. Let's make sure that the person is blocking out, okay, and boxing out, and not backing out, all right, or they're displacing. Let's make sure we're watching for that. At the high school level, a lot of people like to follow the ball, but we need to do a better job, especially in this game, because there's so much on the line, that we need to be watching the rebounders, and that they're not displacing the opponent. Also, we need to make sure that the person in the back is not pushing off to grab the rebound. So again, let's make sure we're watching the rebounds and not the ball in flight.
Got it.
Okay, verticality. We know that they can go straight up to the ceiling. With that, let's make sure that the defender's not using their body to body them up. All right. A lot of the players, when we call that foul, they're like, but my arms were straight up. Yes, they were.
Especially on the high school level. Yep.
Exactly. They're using their body to move into that shooter. And that's a foul. And we need to get that. Okay. Freedom of movement. When the cutters are cutting through, we need to allow them to cut through. Anytime their rhythm, speed, balance, or quickness is impeded, we need to get that. All right, that's not what's supposed to happen. So we need to get that right away.
And let's just make sure, let's just make sure we both understand. We got to have freedom of movement on offense as well as defense. All right. If cutters are cutting, defenders need to be able to follow them without being pushed, rerouted, or shoved.
Excellent. Yep, I agree. Okay. What else? Verticality. Post play.
Post play. We talk about post play in 3 seconds.
Yeah, go ahead. What do you got?
I believe the visiting team has a good post play. All right.
Yes, I agree.
You had them not too long ago.
Yes.
They have a good post player. So let's make sure that she's being guarded legally. Right. Without the ball, the defender is allowed 2 points of contact.
Mm-hmm.
Once that post player receives the ball, that defender immediately has to become legal, which means she has to get one of those points of contact off of that post player.
Agreed.
All right. So Let's make sure that is occurring. Again, if also if the post player does turn and face the basket, they are now a ball handling dribbler. So we do have to recognize that and understand that now that the defender, even if she had 1 point of contact, once the post player does turn, they do get that one hot stove touch. And I think we're going to have that today, since the visiting team does have that very, very good post player.
Yeah. Okay, great. Good. And yeah, bench decorum. So the visiting coach, let's talk about that. We know at the high school level, it's still 28 foot, or
Right.
28 feet, I should say.
Coaching box, 28 feet, right?
Right.
At 40.
The visiting coach is very animated and likes to scream and yell. She likes to call every play down the court. She's very verbal. There's something on every single play. So let's just be aware of that. We know that we do not have to give her a warning if she's out of the box and she's irate, that we can tee her up right away. But if she's in the box and she's asking questions, and we can give her a warning first and go with that. But we know that we don't have to give a warning right away. Right.
Right. Well, if she's asking questions, Sheri, let's respond to them. If it's every play, let's just let her know we can't talk to her on every whistle. If it's egregious, then we'll come with a warning. If it's overly egregious, then she earned her technical foul.
Agreed.
But I'm pretty sure she knows what's at stake tonight. It's like I said, it's top 2 team in the conference. They're vying for that top playoff spot. So let's hope that both coaches will be on their best behavior. But if they're not, then we have rules to keep them on their best behavior.
Right. And with that said, if we do have to call a technical foul on whether it's a player or a coach, or we have any kind of technical situation, let's not rush into that. Let's, you and I, get together. Let's discuss it. We both get to have a say in it. We'll discuss on how we're going to adjudicate it, and then we'll go to the scores table and we'll tell them exactly what it is and what we're going to do with that play. And
how we're going to resume play.
Yes, exactly. Okay. We know
shot clocks. You want to talk about our shot clock?
Yeah, shot clocks. We know that it's 30. It's it's not the new rule of 20 in the college level. So we know that it's 30.
But we do have our throwing spots.
Yes. All right. So anytime there's a foul in the front court, depending on where it is, it's either going to be at the 228-foot tick marks, or it's going to be on the end line at the 2 3-foot tick marks underneath the basket. Substitutes, new rule this year. We know that they can come in before the first free throw or after the last successful free throw. Okay, so let's keep that in mind, because that was a little bit hard to get adjusted to this year. Okay. With that said, do you have anything else that you want to add to that?
New terminology we have this year, or the last couple of years, right? We went away from the unsportsmanlike foul and went back to the intentional fouls. Mm-hmm. Our penalty has also changed, where all of our technical fouls, except an admin technical foul for a timeout, mm-hmm. All of our technical fouls go to the division line opposite the table.
Right.
If we do have an excessive timeout, that's administrative. That does go to point of interruption, and it also holds possession.
Yes.
So, the offended team does shoot 2 free throws, and they get the ball at the spot closest to where the timeout was called.
Correct. And then the team does get that timeout. The team that called the excessive timeout does get that timeout because they bought it.
Right.
Okay, great. Okay, let's just,
okay.
Let's just stay engaged. Let's have a lot of communication. Let's go out there and give us our, 110%, and we'll have a good game. Anything happens, we're going to get together and, we'll do our best.
Sheri, most importantly,
yes,
let's have fun. Right?
Let's have some fun. All right.
Kids are going to be out there playing. The coach is going to be out there coaching. The fans are going to be out there cheering. Let's have fun. All right. Communication, clocks, consistency.
Yes.
And concentration. If we focus on those 4 points, I think we'll be successful tonight. And you know what? The right team will win, and we won't have an outcome in determining who wins the game.
Exactly.
All right. Let's we got about 20 minutes before we got to be out there. Let's stretch. Let's hydrate.
Yep.
And see you soon. Let's have fun.
You need a spark? So
give me a spark. Let's spark it up.
Let's spark it up. Okay, so with that, Carrie, that would be a pregame that you should have with your partners before every game, actually. It's really important to communicate with your partner and get on the same page, no matter what game it is. I always try to have a pregame. Obviously, we do it at the college level, but even at the high school level, I try to have a pregame with every single partner that I do have.
Well, thank you for that, Sheri. As you know, anytime you and I work together, we always have a pregame. Okay, and Carl, great job. Thank you, everyone, for coming on tonight. We're right on time. So I'd like to just let you know what we have planned. We sent out a, hey, what do you guys want from us type of form, and we got really great response to it. And so the plays that we're showing tonight are based on some of the points that you wanted to know from us. Additionally, in our pre-meetings, our pre-planning meetings, we decided to do something different this time and share out the video clips ahead of time so that you could see the clips if you want and become somewhat engaged, just a little bit more familiar with what you're going to be seeing tonight. And I'm really excited to say that 519 officials watched these videos, which is a lot more than the number of officials that are on tonight, but that just goes to show how far-reaching MAGBO is in terms of video review. So who do we have tonight? Tonight we have the in-position camp court clinicians, and these folks are our MAGBO team of educators who I lean on very, very heavily, and they do not disappoint. One of the points that was brought up in the evaluation form from our May 3rd in-position at home camp was that, hey, you did not give enough time to the clinicians. We loved having the guest speakers. Everything that was said was important, but your core clinicians got cut short, and, shame on you for that. So tonight we have the entire slate of core clinicians, and they're all going to be showing their plays to us. So we have Joe Vaszily tonight. Welcome, Joe. We have Stephanie Barksdale. Welcome, Stephanie. We have Scott Berkins. Welcome, Scott. We have Ashley Olsen. Welcome to you. Ashley, we have Sheri Zappala. Sheri is the New York State Girls Basketball Officials Association rules interpreter. We have Carl Small. Welcome, Sheri. We have Carl Small is the MAGBO ref training course head instructor. And we also have Ralph Fornolis. Ralph runs RefereeRant, and he is heavily behind the scenes with MAGBO, helping us get the word out and spread the love with video and with social media. And so we're starting off tonight with Sheri. Sheri's going to talk about staying engaged, and I'm just waiting on Ralph Fornolis, who is going.
I'm here.
Okay, beautiful. Ralph is going to, thanks, Ralph. Ralph is going to queue up the plays for us and show any slides that we have. And so Sheri is going to talk about 2 plays, and Ralph will show the plays, and Sheri will put her comments in. We also want to remind you that we're recording tonight, and put any questions that you have in the chat box. I'm going to be putting some links in the chat. I also already have the evaluation form for tonight. So we have an evaluation form because we want your feedback. We want to improve the program. So I will email that to you, but I'm also putting it in the chat box tonight. Please evaluate us. Let us know what we did well, what we can improve on. And Ralph, whenever you're set, I know you're working on a few things in the background. We appreciate you doing that. Sheri, you're on for staying engaged.
Okay. You're going to make that bigger, Ralph? There we go. Okay, so in this play, you need to keep an eye on black 15. She's at the high post here. She's trying to set some different screens. She tries to set one on the defender there, turns and tries to, can you run that again? When she turns and goes to the basket, she pushes off and actually throws the defender to the ground. What's happening though is here in this, I am the C, as you can see me, I'm the C over there. What's happening is the R rotates over. As I'm backing out of this play, I'm still staying engaged within my primary. Even though the lead has the primary in the middle of the lane, I stayed with black 15 and watched her commit an offensive foul. So play it there. She sets the screen. She turns. She's rolling. I'm backing out. And we see 15 black push off on white and throws her to the ground. So just staying engaged in the play at all times. Even though I'm moving into the trail position, I stayed within my area of responsibility and got that offensive foul. Any question? We got that, Karen? There it is, right there. She pushed off. So stay engaged with that play. If I had, we probably wouldn't have gotten that offensive foul. And the coaches would have been irate at that point.
If anyone has a question, you can type it straight into the chat box and we'll be glad to answer it.
Okay. All right, good, Ralph. I think we're good with that. Did we get any questions on that? Okay.
No, I think we're all set for the backcourt.
Okay.
Like backcourt off the jump ball.
This is a great play that's going to be coming up. Actually, what happens here is that the R, who is tossing the jump ball, which is also Joe Vaszily, it's pretty incredible because as the R, you don't have the whistle in your mouth when you're tossing the ball. So this was actually a pretty impressive get by Joe. So as you can see, he will stay engaged with the play. All right, Gray taps the ball. She receives it in her front court and then throws it to the back court. Joe, kudos on that, man. That was pretty awesome to get that whistle in your mouth that quick.
Sure, Sheri, I think Joe's middle name is impressive, so I don't think you have to, you know.
You might be right on that. So as we can see, ball's tossed. Gray taps it. Blue touches it, I believe. Gray picks it up in her front court and she tosses it back into her back court, and Joe is right on it. Okay, probably would have been a better get from the U1 or the U2, but Joe obviously was engaged in the play, and great call actually. That's a pretty hard one too at the start of the game when you're trying to get your bearings and which way everybody's going, and you know, that's pretty awesome.
Well, and if I could just interject, it's really
Please.
it's really an interesting play because, I mean, and thanks Sheri for that. You know, we know what the restrictions are on the jumpers as well, and so it's actually the Georgetown jumper who catches the ball after they each touch it once, and I can't, hard to tell with the small screen, and then it looks like that blue 12's hands may touch it right before she catches it, which makes her illegal. It makes it legal for her to catch it. Otherwise, if she's the one who catches it after the jump before it touches or hits the ground, then it's going to be a violation by the jumper for catching it. So it's got multiple things, but what really threw me was when she threw the ball back court. You just don't expect you just don't expect the jumper most times to be legal when she gets the ball and then throw it into the backcourt.
Right.
So yeah, and again, I use this play only, we got to be ready right off the tip, and there are lots of jump ball violations that can occur, and then knowing who gets the arrow in this play, right? If the white jumper had violated, blue would get the ball, and then we would set the arrow when the ball is at the disposal of blue on that throw-in. Whereas in this one, white legally obtains the catch, so the arrow is set to blue, and then she violates with a backcourt. So blue's going to get it, and blue's going to get the next arrow, and that's why knowing those, and that's why it's always on our preseason test every season. These particular plays around when do you set the arrow on jump ball, and we usually would set the arrow. After the throw-in, on an AP throw-in throughout the game, we would normally change the arrow after the ball is legally touched on a throw-in. But this is the one scenario where on a jump ball, if there's a violation on the jump ball, you'd actually set the arrow when it's placed at the disposal of the thrower and not when the throw-in is complete. So a lot of things going on in this play, and like I said, it's just, especially when you have it's only a two-person crew. It really puts a lot more pressure on the two referees, the off referee and the tosser. And as Sheri said, we don't have a whistle in our mouth, and we should never have a whistle in our mouth for throwing it up, because you're going to lose a tooth if you do. But given that, just being ready for just about anything off the tip. So.
Yeah. Right.
Okay, thank you, Sheri and Joe. And our next topic came from you, the listeners. One of the main topics that you had was refereeing with distractions. So what is it like to referee with a lot of noise in the gym, or even someone screaming at you, whether it's a fan or coach or who's trying to call timeout, and how do you keep it all together in order to still have a good game? And so we're going to give this topic to Stephanie, who grabbed it as soon as I threw it out there.
I did. Can you hear me?
Yes, Stephanie.
Awesome. I thought this was, first of all, let me back up. Good evening, everyone. It's great to see your faces. So excited to see so many people taking the time out to improve their craft on a Sunday evening. So when Carrie mentioned this topic from the survey, I immediately raised my hand because I had to take a really concerted effort to work on this. And it's something that doesn't often get talked about, but it's something that's very, very real. So let's take a step back. Before we get to the screaming fans or all the boos, let's just talk about the distractions to get to the game. So one of the challenges living in the Northeast, and maybe if you don't live in the Northeast, that's okay, but there's traffic. And so for me, a lot of anxiety was pent up because I was rushing and I was trying to get to the gym or trying to locate the gym. In a lot of situations, if you're unfamiliar with the location of the gym, you could be driving or walking around a campus and you don't know where you're going. And as you're doing this, anxiety is slowly starting to build and build and build. So that one of the ways to alleviate this anxiety is to make sure that you're early. I can't impress upon you how much this will help your game, because it gives you a few extra minutes to just decompress. You get to the gym, sit in the parking lot, or either sit in the locker room and get your thoughts together. For gyms that I've never been to, I get there early. Our typical rule of thumb is to be there an hour and a half before. For me, that means an hour and a half, and I'm sitting comfortably in the locker room. Therefore, that usually is about 2 hours that I'll arrive at a location. But for gyms that I've never been to, I will specifically go walk the floor. And the reason why I do this, I had a game with Terry where we got the opportunity to work in an arena, and it was my first time working in an arena. And I was so excited, but I forgot that in arenas, you need to find the scoreboard, you need to find the fouls, or all of these information that you need that's normally just, on the side of a wall. Well, in an arena, you don't have that. So for those in this call, if you're at a gym that you've never been to, whether it be an arena or a high school gym, it's the same. Walk the floor. Give the folks that are the game manager and the clock and shot clock operator an opportunity to get there and go outside and locate that information so you can bring your anxiety levels down. All of these are small little tidbits that will just kind of help you say, woosah. So once the game starts, I think the play that Sheri and Joey just walked us through was a phenomenal example of being ready to referee once the ball goes up. We don't know whether the lights are going to go out, whether someone's going to have a backcourt violation off the jump, but you got to be ready to go. And the best way that you can prepare yourself to be ready to go, and this is a big one, and it's going to sound overly grandiose, but you got to be comfortable with the rules. And Joey just mentioned knowing what to do with the arrow is important, because when something pops up and we don't know, that anxiety goes up. So being comfortable with the rules, having these discussions as Sheri and Carl walked through during your pregame, all of those items are helping bring our anxiety level down so that when something pops up, we have a coach that's out of the box or irate. We have a player who is doing something that's unsporting. We have something that we are not adjudicating properly. When you know the answer and you get it right, it's like one of those things where you can just kind of sit back and in your, what I like to call quiet confidence. You got it right because you know the rules. So let's take a scenario, for example, with a player who is being a distraction in a game. Maybe said player is in the game, or maybe she is not. Maybe she's on the sidelines. I would say one of the things that I've learned and I've heard through teaching and coaching as I've gone through the years, one of the more powerful quotes that I've heard, and I don't remember who I borrowed this from, but it's honestly being borrowed: what we permit, we promote. So we have to address behavior that is unsporting or not within the guidelines early. The first time you see it, you can kind of say something in a more managed manner, meaning you don't necessarily need to call a foul immediately. But if you are to, let's say you see 3 seconds, hey, speak to one of the captains. Your post player is kind of lingering in the paint a little bit too much. Let them address it. Sometimes that works. Sometimes it won't. That being said, it won't be a surprise when you call that 3 seconds. You won't get this big blow up. The captain just told you to get out of the lane. It might be an opportunity for you to, put that little bug in the coach's ear to help so that there isn't a big grandiose response. But at the same token, remember, there's no one size fits all kind of activity that's going to work in every game. I want to preface that. So once something happens, we have to be ready to defuse and remember that every action has an equal and opposite reaction. So if you have a distracting coach is a little bit different, and you have to be careful because you want to make sure at all times you're maintaining your professionalism. sometimes you want to make sure that there's distance between you and the coach, so that in the event that something is said that is unsporting, everybody in the gym can hear it. And you won't have to worry about, well, will you have to defend yourself to your assigner? No, everybody heard it. They deserved whatever the technical foul or warning, wherever they were located. If he or she is not inside the box or they said something that was unsporting, you want to make sure that everybody hears it. If you have a distraction from someone in the stands, and this has happened to me on, I would say multiple occasions, not often, but first and foremost, maintain your composure. Do not address it. It is not your responsibility to address it. If you can identify the individual, that's extremely important. And what was said or being done, if it's demonstrative action or vulgar language, we are in the presence of children. And so you want to know exactly who said it and what was said. Then I would also advise you to wait to a particular point in the game when there's a stoppage, and then get to your game manager. If it's not the game manager that's available, it would need to be probably at the high school level, the head coach, and explain to what the situation is and how we want to proceed. If it's either a warning, having someone say something over the PA announcement, the PA system, that's okay. If it's actually having someone removed, you need to know the who, what, where, why, and when, because you're going to need to report all that information to your assigner. And it's important that you have all of those details. And I'll give you a story. I had a situation where a parent needed to be removed. I gave the information to the high school coach. Of course, the parent was someone who was in support of his team. The coach did not want to take said action, and I was quite okay. So after about, and I'm trying to be diplomatic in this situation, and I'll be honest, I was more nervous about it than anybody else, because I knew that by doing this, I was going to call attention to myself, and I wasn't trying to. But ultimately, the point that I want to make is I felt like it was better in that particular moment for me to take the high road. And we allowed the game to continue. Luckily, another parent who was also on the same team stepped in and made sure that this individual was able to act in an according manner, because he was honestly using language that was very vulgar. So my point in saying all of that is, don't get in a situation where you're being combative with another person. If you don't have what I would call backup to handle it, find the best way to handle the situation in the moment. The kids wanted to play, the parents wanted to play, the players and the coaches wanted to play. I didn't have the necessary tools, and I am not a police officer, nor am I a game manager. I'm there to officiate the game. I gave the warning to the head coach. He relayed it. Everybody in the building knew what it was for, and it didn't happen again. So my point in telling that story is, there's no specific way to handle a situation, but first and foremost, I knew who it was. I knew what was said. We both acknowledged that it was inappropriate, and I then reported it to the assigner, and it was handled off court at a different time. So I'll pause there. I hope this answers the question in terms of distractions, but if not, let me know. I'm going to look through the chat really quickly. I have a few more minutes, but I want to make sure I'm answering the question in regards to distractions. Are there any particular scenarios or something that I can talk about further? I would be more than happy to do so, but I hope I've answered your question.
If someone has a question and you're not willing to type it, if you just type your name into the chat, I'll call on you, and you can unmute yourself and ask us the question yourself.
Yes, and no question is a dumb question. I must say I'm a proponent of curiosity, and until you ask, you won't know. As we're waiting for questions, I will also say distractions can be hecklers. In this business, I've learned how to have thicker skin. So as I've gotten more and more comfortable in my rules, that's a carry or travel. I know the travel rules. You don't know the travel rules. So I don't really pay attention to it. it's that, again, quiet confidence. When you know what you know, there's nothing that no one can say that's going to deter you or get you off your game, so that you can honestly just say, that's not the rule, in your mind. You don't turn around and respond. I had a game this year, and I'm laughing because I shouldn't have done this. It was a game, and I want to say the students were on break, so there were very few people in the gym. A fan said something, very few people in the gym, and I turned around and I responded to him while we were shooting free throws. And he said to me in a very loud manner, "You shouldn't be talking to me." And I was like, "You are so right. I should not be talking to you." So do not respond to fans. Okay, I got a question. Hey, Toby, if you notice your partner's distracted. Okay, so if my partner is distracted, I would personally say something encouraging. I really would. I would remind them why they are here and how they got here, and remind them that they're doing a good job. There's a play that I think we're going to see later on, so I won't give it away. But there's a call that's made, and the partner is confirming the call with a big head nod, like, yeah, great call. Sometimes it's just that small reassurance that you need. And Scott is going to talk about this further in order to get your partner or your crew on the same page. But there are little small gestures that we can do to encourage one another along the way. And so if you notice your partner is being heckled or being bothered by a coach, you can do things, just again, small gestures. And so this may come up, for example, if you're working with a newer official and a coach is being really, really just laying it on to the newer official. I've said this in the past, and we all have to start somewhere. And so one of the things that, you can remind everyone is that, hey, I was new at one point too. So you're okay. We're all going to make it through. We're all going to live. So just take one step at a time. Don't try to do more than you can, but just be in that moment. Don't be anywhere else. Don't think about what's going to happen before. Don't think about the last game. Stay in that moment. Anything else? Carrie or any other clinicians, would you care to add? Did I miss anything?
No, Stephanie, I don't think you missed anything. I remember the game that we were on, and I want to say that something about that technical foul on the parent. I may have been in that gym as well, but let's not go back down memory lane. No. Great job.
But I will say this. Oh, go ahead, Joe. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, I can vouch for Stephanie getting there early, because she and I had a game early last season. It was my first trip down there as well. It was somewhere down south, and I believe it was her first trip down there, and she was there well before I was, and we both went out on the court and walked around to get a look at the floor. And I can't echo enough what she said, getting there early, and just that it just relaxes you when you're there on time with enough time to unwind and get used to the setting and wherever it is, whether it's a new place or you've been there 1,000 times. Use that time to your advantage and to your partner's advantage, just to settle in.
Totally agree. Because you think about it, we only go out with 15 minutes, and you have so many things to do within that 15 minutes. You got to check the uniforms. You got to check the book. You're trying to find a ball. You're trying to get an idea of player tendencies in that 15 minutes. If you can take something off of your plate that you're not needing to do during the warm up, it will just bring the anxiety level way down. Sometimes if you're in a gym with a monitor, the monitor might be in an awkward place. The PA amounts of where's he or she sitting, all those little small details just help bring you down. And it's what I call my woosah. So by the time, what I typically do, and then I'll wrap this up, is by the time we get to the national anthem, I am already thinking about how I want to feel when the game is over. And I say feel because when you think positive thoughts, you get positive responses. So it takes out any anxiety or any nervous energy, and I'm already starting to feel like I want to have a good game. I want to make my first call solid. I want to make sure I have positive interactions with the coach. I want to do my part to service the game. If I make a mistake, I'm going to brush my shoulders off and keep going.
I love it, Stephanie.
All right. Okay. So
great job. You're on with the next topic, screening.
Next topic, screening. Okay. So got my handy dandy rule book. The first thing I said was you got to know your rules. And I'm going to make this really brief. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but if you have your rule book handy, I would highly encourage you to turn to page 110. And the appendix doesn't really get a lot of attention, but when I tell you the appendix is probably, for me, the best part of the rule book, because it gives you, or let me rephrase that. For me, it gives me a better understanding of the rules. So I think one of the questions that someone asked is how to study the rule book. And this is just me and my opinion. I go read the appendix first, and I read it every year. They give us, I get 2 rule books actually, because this is not a rule change year, but I make it my business to read through the rules every year, and I dog ear and highlight, and I do it every year because it helps. So if you go to page 110, it says a screen is a legal action by any player with or without the ball, which without causing contact delays or prevents an opponent from reaching a desired position. A screener must maintain a normal stance with the inside feet not wider than shoulder width apart. If a player is engaged in illegal screening tactics, there is no contact with the opponent. No foul has occurred. Great. Okay. So now we're going to flip to the definition of screening, which is in chapter 10, and that's 10.5. Again, I'm not going to read this whole thing, but if you go to page 89, I'm going to just really quickly highlight Article 3. So we know what they can't do. If you know what they can't do, then you can kind of deductively reason what you can do. So a player shall not, A, cause contact by setting a screen outside a visual field of a stationary opponent that does not allow the opponent to take a normal step to move. We'll come back to that. B, make contact to the opponent when setting a screen within the visual field of that opponent. Okay. And then C, take a position so close to a moving opponent that opponent cannot avoid contact by stopping or changing direction. Remember those 3 points. Okay, Ralph, you ready?
Ralph is ready.
Ralph is ready. All right. So we're going to take a look at 4 plays that are going to highlight what we just discussed. And this first play is called an elevator screen. And I must say that in officiating, there are certain plays that just make my little spidey sense go off. And whenever I see them, there's a 99.9% chance that there's a problem. So I'm going to let it go through one more time, just so everybody has a good look at it. Okay, so what happens is if you pay attention to pause, the 2 post players at each end of the elbow, I can't see their numbers, I apologize, but there is a blue player who's running through the middle. And if you notice, as soon as she gets right between them, there's 3 Duke players, and as she gets between them, the 2 post players are going to come together. And it's called an elevator screen because if you imagine, the doors of an elevator do this. So as soon as she gets through, the 2 post players are going to close. The door will close. Boom, doors close. So as I just read, you cannot set a screen that does not allow a player to stop and change direction. This is a foul. The question that I'm often asked is, who is the foul on? That's a difficult question because they both created illegal contact. So this is where kind of referee 4.0 comes in, because one of the things that we need to know is we know player fouls. They're both in illegal positions. If it were me, I'm probably going to give it to the player who has the least amount of fouls, just being honest, because both post players are illegal. Does that make sense? And I'll let Joe jump in or any of the other clinicians.
I'd be happy to, Steph. You know, I think I remember this play. I remembered this play, and I'm in the lead, and I remembered this play. I still remember it, and it's from not this season, but the season before. That when we didn't have a foul, I cringed. It was one of those plays where you're just expecting a whistle to go off, and it was right in a transition as you see trails going back to trail, center's going. Ralph, just pause it right there. So the offensive player who's their best shooter, and this is where knowing your team tendencies are so important. You've got the old trail. I'm rotating. I've just about completed the rotation. The old trail has already down to C. She has a straight line look. The old center is going to be the new trail. He also has a straight line look. They're both right at the foul line extended. And that's where, sometimes just because there's a rotation happening, if you're in a good position and you see a play about to happen and contact that's going to happen after that, then, you need to hold your position. And so either new center's got to hustle to get the trail, or take a step down maybe, or take a step up to try to referee it. And the old trail who's going to center needs to kind of pause and kind of hold that position. And so at 8:07 in the first period, there's no fouls on each team, as you can see on the ticker. This play, Stephanie says it out, very accurately. This play needs a whistle, and it's an illegal screen. And because they do not give the player in white an opportunity to stop or change direction. She's a moving opponent. And I would just echo, kind of with deciding who it's on, it's, on this one, you pick one or the other. I would have picked 25 blue because she sets really bad screens anyway. But I've seen her play enough times to know. But this play needs a whistle. There's contact. Yeah. It's obvious illegal contact, and it needs a whistle. And we're not in a good position to referee it. We got two outside officials, and I could have come and gotten it. But honestly, people have asked me about this. Like, if I would have come from lead, I would have called it on the defense, because I would have been guessing.
You see backside.
Right. And we don't want to guess on plays either, because when we guess, we're not always accurate, and fouls are fouls, and we don't want to put them on the wrong player. But this needs to come from one of the two outside officials, and that's where kind of early in the game, kind of getting used to teams' offenses and knowing who their shooters are, and knowing especially that Duke, this is their shooter. Number 2 is that season was their only outside shooter. So when she's coming through one of those screens, you got to be in a position and not straight line, like trail and center were. But thanks, Steph. Great job talking.
No, thank you. I appreciate it, Joe. And just to tie this in, I think Sheri's play earlier is a great example, and I'm going to bring in the point of distractions. You can have distractions. I won't say distractions, but your concentration level maybe goes down when we rotate. Make sure you maintain that high level. And Joe just mentioned not taking yourself out of position when you have a great look at a play. So that play, as he mentioned, definitely needs a whistle. Here's another illegal screen, and I mentioned the rule, and I'll go ahead and Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry. Can I have a question for Joe on that last play?
Yeah, Carl.
If you don't mind.
Of course.
What was it discussed at halftime, and if so, what was the discussion? If you don't mind me asking.
Yeah, and Carl, it's at the media timeout, here's where crew dynamics come in big. I think at the first media timeout, I said, I think I alluded to it just for us to be aware of Duke's running a lot of screens, running them on the sides, running the elevator up top, running dribble handoffs, and that we needed to be, strongly engaged from all three positions. And then at halftime, the first thing I said is, what'd you all think of the play at 8:08? And Bruce, I think it was Bruce who gave himself up completely. He knew it was a foul. And again, it was like me, because he wasn't in a great position to referee it. I just didn't know who was on, so he passed. And so, and I'm sympathetic to that, but at the same time, we got to be good enough on obvious illegal contact to know who created or who is responsible, for the illegal contact on this one. So, but great question, Carl.
Thanks,
and again,
thank you, Joe.
Every time, you have to be sensitive to, kind of the situation you're in and who you're working with on when is the right time. I'm going to talk about that a little bit, later on, but, kind of knowing when to bring those kinds of situations up is important. So.
Good question. Thank you.
Thanks,
Great.
Joe. Sorry to interrupt, but thank you. Thank you very much. Steph.
No,
Thanks, Joe.
thank you. If you have a question, let me know. I'm going to jump to the next one. I know I'm going to keep myself in my time box. Keep an eye on the center official, the gentleman on the far sideline. The contact is going to happen over towards him. I'm going to let Ralph play it one more time. Okay, so what happens is the post player steps up to put a screen on the defender. However, when she does so, I can't see her number. I apologize, she should have had her number. When she does so, she doesn't give an opportunity to stop and change direction. That's number one. Number two, she's outside of her visual field. So it's a total surprise. Whenever someone's neck snaps back, it's a sign that something illegal has happened. Right there. That hurts. That's a foul. And our center official is in the correct spot. We're still in transition, and he picks her up early, and then correct call. Hand goes up, and he gets his signal, and we move on. And so the coach is right there as well. So she can't say what happened, what did she do. It's obvious. This play we cannot not have a whistle on. It's important. Any questions? Okay, if not, we're going to jump to the next one, and it's going to be a similar blind screen. Again, whenever you see a player's neck kind of bounce back like that, that hurts. I used to play. I'm telling you, it hurts. Here's another one, a screen set on an opponent who's not given an opportunity to stop and change direction. If you pay attention to the upper area, oh, I'm sorry, do it one more time, Ralph, I'm sorry. Just above the elbow would be the elbow closest to the center official. Right there. And I'm right, hold just a second, Ralph. Look at the positioning of the center official, right? And so if you notice by rule or by our mechanics manual tells us that we need to be free throw lane line extended. I am by no means making up a new rule, but I would like to point out, if you notice, all the players are high, or majority of the players are high. So the players dictate where we go. So our center was a little high. If you would imagine if she were maybe 2 steps over, she wouldn't have as good of a look at this play, but she's, for this play, in a good position to see the play. Again, our rule of thumb, our home position is free throw lane line extended, and that's the rule, and that's where we should be. But remember, we have the ability to adjust the rule to make sure we can see the play. So here we have the illegal screen by the moving opponent, white 10. She just barrels over her. She never stops. She creates the contact. She runs into the defender. That is a foul. In order to set a screen, as I read previously, you need to be stationary and you can't cause the contact. Our center official correctly gets her arm up and she punches it. Great job.
And notice the time and the score.
Important.
Big play, big call, white down 3. And, kudos to Keisha for getting it. And of course, and again, talking about what Carl mentioned, we got in the locker room and we had this play clipped and sent to the coordinator within 5 minutes of us getting our iPads back. Cause obviously, it's a critical play. It's a game affecting, it's a game affecting play, and kudos to her for getting it right and officiating the illegal contact that Steph spelled out. Great job.
Any questions? Let me just jump over to the chat really quickly. Okay, one last screening play. How am I doing on time? Okay, I'm right at my time. Make this quick. All right. This one is going to be an illegal screen, and if you watch white 34, keep your eyes on white 34. And as I read earlier, before you hit play, a screen is set where your feet are shoulder width apart. Watch white 34. Go. Did you catch it? one more time, and then I'll give a brief description. So as you can see, white 34's left leg hits with the gold player's right leg. It's important that we make sure we pick up this player's stance because this is an illegal screen. She is beyond her shoulder width apart. And you can usually tell this because one leg is going to be straight legs and they're kind of leaning in one area. This happens a lot in the women's game. You'll either get the legs that are too wide or you'll get the chicken wings that are too wide. You are, again, as the rule stated, I didn't make this up, we read it in the rule book, a shoulder width apart. You do have an ability to absorb contact, but you have to be within your stance. And here, unfortunately, this is an incorrect call. The foul is given to gold, and it was actually, it's supposed to go to, it was given to gold 1, but the foul is technically on white 34. She is too wide and outside of her shoulder width apart stance. So I would just ask, if you are officiating, make sure you can get in position where you see both feet and you can referee that contact, because this should have been an offensive foul. Any questions, Joe? Anything you want to add, or anyone else, or any of the other of the 4 clips before we move on?
There's a question.
We have a question. Is this the C or the trails call? This is a call that needs to come from the trail official. The C, as you notice, does have a whistle on it. The C in this position is a little high. He's actually very high. And so let's address that. Push pause. I know in the previous play I said, look at the players, allow them to dictate where you are. Look at the players in this play. Where is the referee? This is a great example of where when we're not in our position. In this position, in this play, he could very well referee his responsibility from home position, which is free throw line extended. So because he's out of position, it's naturally that we're going to draw our eyes to the ball. There's something to be said of helping our partners, and this is not necessarily a help play. We are at 119 in the first quarter. The trail does have a whistle on it, albeit that she unfortunately does get it wrong. There is a whistle. This is not a play where I would typically say we needed 2 whistles. If the if the center official had been in his home position, I would be more willing to bet that he probably would not have had a whistle. Now, that being said, because the play is going away from the trail, it is a little bit difficult for her to see, but this is one of those opportunities where you can kind of what they call work the arc, come onto the court a little bit so you can see a little. I'm not asking you to get run over. Remember, you got to get back. But if you come onto the court a little, you would be in position to see that 34's legs were way too wide. But this is a call that the trail should have had. All right, I'm 4 minutes over. I want to thank you all for your time. I appreciate your questions. If you have anything else, just make sure you submit them to Carrie and I'll get back to you. Thank you. I appreciate your time.
Thanks so much, Stephanie. And we don't mind going over a few minutes with you, of course.
I was trying.
We appreciate everybody being on time. Next up, we have Scott Berkins. Scott's going to talk about 2 things, crew chemistry and traveling.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Steph, thanks for stealing my time. No, I'm just kidding. So basically, we've kind of touched on a few of these things regarding crew chemistry, but I'm just really here to talk about kind of a general consensus of what crew chemistry should be. And as I was jotting a few things down and talking to, a few of my peers about this, crew chemistry really begins before we even arrive at the game. Crew chemistry begins when we send out our emails or we send out our phone calls. And I'm not sure on the high school level, but I'm sure there's some type of communication between, if I'm working a game with Sheri, I might text her, hey, Sheri, I'll be there at, 4 o'clock game, I'll be there at 3 o'clock, where to park, or anything pertaining to how we're going to get to the game, making sure we arrive safely and that we know that there is a game and we know the time of the game. As you're making the jump to college level, or if you already are officiating college, the procedures and protocols that we follow are very, very, very stringent on the coordinator. Certain coordinators want you to contact the school. Certain people want the umpire to contact the SID. Certain coordinators want no contact with the school. So we want to make sure that if we're working for multiple conferences, that we follow whatever protocols that particular coordinator wants us to do. Because the first thing that's going to happen if there's an issue with any of us arriving to the game or the game time is going to be, did you email? Did you call? Did you contact the school? So we want to make sure that we dot our I's and cross our T's, and make sure that we do all the things necessary to make sure that everybody knows that the game's starting at 7 p.m. I'll be there at 5:30. If you're flying, I'm arriving at this amount of time. Do you need a ride? Do you need help getting a rental car? Where are you staying? I could pick you up. You don't need to get a rental car. You don't need to spend more money than you already have to get to the game. Just little things like that. So if we're sending an email on when a couple of camps we go to, Brian Burnett always makes a great presentation. When you email somebody, you say, please confirm the game and how your travel plans. And then you write back, confirmed. That does absolutely nothing for anybody, because we want to know your travel plans. We're not just confirming. So if I say, hey, Kerry, please tell me your travel plans, and she write back, see you at the game, we're already off to a bad start. So little things like that aren't really necessarily involved with the calls we make on the court, they go a long way. And I think that if we have a relationship kind of through text or email or phone call before, and we're friendly and we're helpful, I think when we get to the locker room, we're already one step ahead of the game. That we know, we're a team. If you got stuck on the highway, I'll pick you up, leave your car there. Just that comforting feeling that, we have the three of us. Let's be real. Nobody else likes us. So if we have the three of us and we have a bond, we keep each other and make sure nobody messes with the three of us, then we do a long way on crew chemistry. So just obviously now we get to the game, we all confirmed it and we all get there safely. Good crew chemistry, a thorough pregame, even if you are familiar with the crew, which is no blind trust. There's a lot of times we're going to fortunately be able to work with friends, people that we work with a lot. And the more games you do, the more opportunities you're gonna have to work with the same people. And I think that you could ask any of the court clinicians on this call, we always go through our thorough pregame. You wanna go through and make sure that we are comfortable. A thorough pregame does not just involve the R speaking. So if I'm the crew chief, I want to make sure that my U1 and U2 are comfortable. I always say this is an open pregame. So I might be the crew chief, but if you have something to say, you might have the teams, you might have had the coaches, you might have had a particular play involving one of the teams. We need to know that, because anything we know to help us in that game before we get out there is going to really help the crew. So don't when a player does something and then we get together at the first media timeout, that she always does that. We need to know this in the locker room, because anything we could use to help our judgment or to help our communication is beneficial. Talk through the process if we have a monitor review. So I don't think there's any monitor reviews in high school. We saw somebody's cell phone in the crowd, but in college, oftentimes, especially Division I, we have a monitor review. More often than not, if we're at a monitor review, it's for an unusual situation or a situation where we're not 100% sure about something that happened. So if we could talk through the process of what we're going to do if we have a monitor review, and we can expedite the process, because we hear it every year at the NCAA Regional Clinic that they want the process to go quick and smooth. Everybody watches ESPN. Everybody watches the NBA. We're not here to talk bad about the NBA, but when they're at the monitor for a long time, that's when people start to get a little uneasy. Coaches get uneasy, the players get uneasy, the fans get uneasy. So we want to make sure that we expedite the process as quick as we can, come up with a decision. So if we talk about what we're going to do before the game starts, it will probably help us speed up that process. At the end of the day, we're going to stay there as long as we can to get the play right. But if we have some tools and we have a basis of what we're going to do when we get there, it can go a long way. Have there been any situations involving any of the crews? We can touch on that. Now, all these things are fine and good, but a main aspect of good communication is, like Joe said before, you're going to be working with different personalities night in, night out. I was talking to my wife about this before. It's amazing that we do a job where we're working with different people pretty much every night, and the teams are different pretty much every night. There's not too many jobs that you're going to go to where you're working with completely different people and a completely different product every night. So if we could just do our best to be good people and good listeners, I mean, it goes a long way. And I know that I've been in locker rooms with Kerry and Joe and Sheri and Stephanie and all the other clinicians on this call. And just the fact that you're heard and you have a voice in the locker room in the pregame, it really goes a long way on the floor. I mean, I've been in locker rooms where it hasn't been that way, where it's been the crew chief talks and you listen, and, you know, after 25 minutes, human instinct is we start to fade out. So if we can engage the U1 and U2 and everybody feel important, it really goes a long way on what we're going to do on the floor. And coaches see when we communicate with each other. You know, I tell my crews all the time, I give you a thumbs up. You know, we count players. Sometimes you'll see me pointing. I rather point, and at least you know I'm counting, and I have 10 players on the floor, then we all blind trust, and now we have 12 players or 11 players or 12 players, and we have a big problem. So just subtle things like that. You know, there's a tough call. It doesn't have to be right then and there, but I might look at Steph. I might give her a little this, or if I have a tough play, she might, you know, give her a little head nod. Just something, you know, we all have that nervousness in our stomach when we make a big call or things are going a little bit astray. So if we can communicate with each other and just make ourselves feel more comfortable, just based on like a little look or a thumbs up, it really does go a long way. Which brings me to my next topic, which I told Kara I'd speak about. When things start to go a little bit south, you know, this is all, everything I said is good if, you know, the game's going smooth and players are playing, coaches are coaching, but when things go south is when we really need to rise up, and our communication needs to be paramount. It always does, but especially when things start to go a little bit, you know, and we all know it might not be a particular situation. It may be a few plays. It might be a dealing with a coach, you know, and we need to just have each other's back. Coaches are going to be frustrated. It's natural instinct for Kerry to make a call, and, you know, they're all over Kerry, or I make a call and they're all over me, and then Sherry's on her way up the floor, and now they have Sherry's ear. We have to make sure that coaches know that you could speak to us. We understand the difference between frustration, but you're not going to split and divide the crew. And we all know that feeling when we make a call and now we see our partner talk to the coach, and, you know, they're smiling and they're buddy. And we all get that, you know, we look over, you know, what is this? We know the difference between communicating and diffusing than coddling. So I think that if we could do that, and it is a fine line, there's not going to be an exact science. Everybody has a different personality. You know, I might talk to coaches a little more than some people. About another crew chief might talk to somebody a little less. You know, less is more. We all have different personalities. So as long as that somebody addresses the coach, hears them out, professional. I think Steph said it before. We're professional. We're respectful. We have a job to do. They have a job to do. We have to understand this is not personal. These coaches on Division I level, Division II, and Division III, for the most part, their occupation is to coach. They get fired based on wins and losses. And I think if we could realize that, it goes a long way. I mean, when I first started, you know, just real talk, you know, when a coach yelled at me, I used to take it personal. You know, what's their problem? It's not personal. It's just part of the game. And you might see that coach, you know, in the hallway or at a camp in the summer, you know, and they're talking to you, and I can't believe how they acted during that game. It's not personal, and we all know the difference when it gets personal. But more often than not, they're just there to coach their team. They're there to question. If we give them answers and we act appropriately and respectfully, we could diffuse a lot of situations. So when things start to go south is when we really need to rise up. There's not going to be something you're going to read in the rules manual or mechanics manual that are going to dictate what you should do. It's more of just knowing your partners. And I think that if we do a good job with our pregame and our communication before we get there, then we have an understanding of who we are as people, and we can really help each other out. So, I mean, if there's any questions in the chat as far as crew communication, it's a really important aspect, especially if you're trying to move up the ladder, that, you know, you might be the U2 on your first college game, but your opinion matters just as much as that crew chief, you know, and you need to be able to be confident to say, you know, I'm not comfortable, or if we get together a timeout. You know, I've been the U2 where I've been uncomfortable, and, you know, and I just ran over to the crew chief or ran over to the U1, just a quick conversation, you know, and it goes a long way. It goes a long way. You know, we don't want to bring things to the locker room, so we could address things on the floor, and we can address things as a crew together. it really does wonders keeping us together as a crew and not individuals, because we all know that if we referee as individuals, we're not gonna have a very long career. You know, we're a crew. Every night we go out, we're a crew with those particular partners. So I don't know if there's any questions in the chat or.
Scott, just to piggyback on that, I like to even more so at the high school level, I like to make contact with my referee that I'm refereeing with, my partner, before every game. That way they just feel like there's a connection. You know, once they text me back, I know we're kind of on the same page, and you know, we're both going to be at the game, and then I can prepare a pregame or whatever the case may be. But so more so at the high school level, because a lot of times they don't do that, and I've started to do that the last 5 years or so, that I contact every single partner before my game, whether
Yeah,
or a day before.
it's a great thing. And you know what? I'm pretty strict with my routine. So, you know, I get I'm a teacher by day. So I get to school Monday morning. I send out my emails for the week. And, you know, we're not getting in a huge dialogue going back and forth. But, you know, hope everything's well with your family. Just a little thing like that. It doesn't have to be something crazy, but just to hope everything's well, hope your season's going well. Just to know that, you know, you're there for your partner if you need them, and more than just I'll see you at the game. But I think, like you said, even with high school, it's a comforting feeling, because I remember when I started high school, and this wasn't always the case. And if I didn't know the partner, maybe it was my fault. I didn't reach out, and I used to sit there and go, "Oh man, I hope they show up. I hope they show up. I hope they show up." And then, you know, you get a knock on the phys ed office door, wherever you're changing. "Hey, is your partner here?" And the last thing you want to do is say, "Oh, I don't even know who my partner is," or "I don't have their number." So it just looks like you're on top of it. And more often than not, it does go a long way. It seems ridiculous that something not involving the game can go a long way for the game. But I think the more you realize that what we do is a people. It's a people's game, and it's being a good person is really, really important. And that's just one aspect of it.
Well, Scott, these are real important points, especially for the high school official. I mean, years ago, you would get a schedule in the mail, and it would have like your partner's name and maybe their home address, okay, mailing address. And you would sit and wait and see if anybody did show up and knock on that locker room door. It was a really bad feeling. Or it wasn't the same person, you know, the partner got switched or whatever. And so anybody that works with me at the high school level, they know they're getting a phone call from me. I'm leaving a voicemail saying who I am and things like that. And I think, you know, if you want to get to the next level or even just work better games at whatever level you're at, you know, this is something really simple that you can add to your game and have a better game because of it. So
Yeah,
thank you.
I agree. You're welcome. And I don't know if there's any questions. And I'm not exactly sure how this transitions into traveling, but I guess we talked about traveling into the game. So we will, whenever you are ready for those clips, Ralph. If there's any questions, you could text, you could email Kerry or email or text me, but feel free. All righty, traveling. Play one. I want to let the play run through first. You ready to see that play? Okay. Okay. So this play, obviously, red 3 starts, the red player catches the ball. Her left foot is her pivot. And I was texting with another official. Probably a righty. A righty, more often than not, wants their left foot as their pivot foot. Her initial drive is legal because the ball, which I was looking for a pre-dribble travel, which I did not see. So if you look, she dribbles before her left foot leaves the floor, which is a legal play. Often we see this in women's basketball, the pre-dribble travel. We pregame that. We have to really do a good job of picking up those feet, because that pre-dribble travel, what often happens, which didn't happen in this play, is we miss the travel and then we have a block charge. So now, if that white defender would have stepped up, we may have had a block charge situation. So we can get that pre-dribble travel. We alleviate basically 2 decisions we have to make, whether it's a block or a charge or just even a common foul. So her initial drive is legal because she dribbles. Her left foot does not move. Once she controls the ball after the dribble, her right foot becomes her landing foot. So if we watch it there, I can't see it from this angle, but I'm assuming she has control of the ball. She actually moves both feet, I believe, in this picture. So she gathers the ball, clearly controls the ball, goes to her left foot and her right foot. So I just jotted down a couple notes about this play. In this play, the player moves the pivot foot again. So if you see right there, it's a left and a right. Rule 9, Article 5. I'm going to read it to you guys just because, like Steph said, the rule book is our friend, and I just jotted it down because it has something to do with this play. So Rule 9, Article 5 is, after coming to a stop and establishing the pivot foot may be lifted but not returned to the playing court before the ball is released on a pass or try for goal. So she actually moves both feet here. So right there, she has to go up before her foot hit the floor. So she returns the left and the right. And to many people, that looks like a great move. I think people call that like a step. Sometimes it's called a step through. That is not a step through. That is a blatant travel. That player gains about 6 feet with those 2 steps. So if we're going to they are way too athletic to let them get away with that. So if there's any questions about that play, you can put in the chat. That's a good play because we lose sight of the ball. So now that, I'm not sure where the lead is on that play, but if the lead was across and they're looking through a whole bunch of defenders, that C is going to have to pick that up. And what Steph was saying before, that C is either going to have to step up. I would probably take a step up to try to get a view on the ball, because right now, as a center official, if I'm the side closest to the closest end line, that's really tough to call a travel when you don't see the ball. So we want to make sure we work our angle. So if you see there, gathers, step 1, 2, yeah, that's a clear advantage. And we're not calling travels on advantage, disadvantage. We're calling travels on the rule book, but she gains a lot of ground with that move. I actually thought when we first watched this play that we were watching the travel on the pre-dribble, but she did not. The travel is not a pre-dribble travel. Are there any questions about this play? I mean, it's pretty cut and dry. I won't say the same thing about the next play though. Ralph, you could run this like 2 to 3 times before I even speak about it.
You can do it, Scott.
No, Joe, thanks. This is Joe's game, by the way. I'll give him up real quick after you see this play. One more time. All right, so after seeing this play 7 times, I won't even say what I mumbled under my breath, but after probably the 6th or 7th time, I realized what I probably should have done the first time, which is pick up that first foot. So if you could, Ralph, if you could slow it down right, I guess, as soon as she catches the ball. I don't know if you can do that. Okay. So this play, step, step, step. So if you watch it, can you run it in slow motion, Ralph? Right, left, right. Now, if anybody can see that the first time, you're pretty good. And I had a conversation with one of the officials on this game, which I just mentioned his name, and he made a really great point. And even though there's no competitive matchup, our job in our primary area is to pick up that foot. Okay, we hear it from our coordinators all the time. The feet, the feet, the feet. And it looks like something very subtle. It looks like a little bit of nothing, but that is a clear travel. That pivot foot is lifted. So you were picking up that primary foot. And and honestly speaking, I said, are we going for the next competitive matchup? But when that ball is in our area, we are responsible for calling fouls and violations. So as soon as we pick up the feet, and if this play was legal, then we pick up the next competitive matchup, or we use our peripheral to pick up the next competitive matchup. But if we are not looking at the feet, then nobody else is coming to make that call. That call is clearly in our primary area. And we spoke about if it was a trail coming up the backcourt, same thing. You're the calling official in that primary area. We are picking up that initial foot. The same way we would on a pre-dribble travel, even though she's not highly contested at the time she catches the ball, that right foot is clearly moved. Now, real talk. That play, I believe, was sent in by a coach that did not even observe that play during the game. I guess rightfully so if we watch it 5 times. But the rule book is our friend. And I am not telling you to disregard the rule book. But that is a tough call. If we are going to get that travel, which we should, we have to make sure that we are really good on travels the entire game, because that coach who got that travel called against them, that probably didn't see it, but is still going to have a problem that player is 75 feet away from the basket and we call the travel when nobody's even closely guarding her. We now opened up Pandora's box to calling travels the entire game. And we really have to be better on travels. We have to be better on travels. These players are too good to gain competitive advantages by that quick on that dribble drive or that extra step we're giving them. They're just too skilled. So if we did a better job on picking up that initial foot on every play, I feel like that one would almost be more pronounced. But because we leave the play, or we leave our primary area a little bit too soon, we miss that foot, and we miss that slight shuffle that is clearly, after watching it, a travel. And I'm pretty sure after the 5th time we watch it, we're all going, oh, there it is. But I'm almost certain on that first time we were all watching, what's the play? What's the play? Because it's just not called often.
Let me interject here.
Sure.
Great job. When we go out and in pregame, whether it's 10 minutes, 15 minutes before, you can find this play happening on every layup drill and every jump shot drill. Because here's the key piece to this play. Right-handed shooters want their left foot to be the pivot. So this 23 is a righty. What foot does she catch on? The right. She doesn't want the right foot to be her pivot foot. She wants the left. And that's why she does the right, left, right. And yes, the reason why a lot of times we don't get it, and Scott said it, she's not being competitively guarded. So immediately our eyes go to where the closest blue defender is, and that's the kid who's coming up from playing some kind of zone defense, it looks like they're playing, okay? But irregardless of that, she catches the ball on her right foot. And so when you're watching layup lines, I'm telling you all, watch the righties and watch the lefties. Because when they catch on their right foot, they will immediately shift to their left foot to be the pivot, and they've traveled. And so there's your key to getting more of these plays right.
No, it's a great point, Joe. It's really a great point, and especially at that place on the floor, we don't see that as a competitive, or she's getting an advantage, which obviously we're not officiating. But now she has the pivot foot she wants. She's a lot more beneficial to her offense than if her right foot was a pivot, being a righty. So just a subtle thing like that, she's clearly gaining an advantage now. She's making her left foot her pivot foot. So it might be subtle and it might be far from the basket, but she's clearly gaining an advantage. And just because that's awful zone defense, we can't just let the travel go against White. But just really 2 interesting plays, 2 kind of higher thinking plays. Just feet. If we do a great job with our feet, we get more travel. We get more travels than we would have. Just pick up that first foot. And if there's any questions, once again, you can feel free to email me or Carrie, or I appreciate everybody, and thanks for having me on the call.
Thank you, Scott. Great job, as always. Next up, we have Carl Small. Carl is MAGBO's ref training fundamentals head instructor, and he's going to talk to us about the subject of picking a mentor and while moving up the ladder.
Hi, everybody. Ralph, you good? Hi, everybody. Carl Small. I'm going to talk about mentoring. If you, to be an official and to move up the ladder, you absolutely need a mentor. So what is a mentor? A mentor is somebody who's going to motivate you, give you advice, help you achieve your goal. They're going to support you. They're going to train you. Hopefully, they're going to point you in the right direction, and eventually you'll become successful. Next slide, Ralph. So as I was putting this presentation together, I said, let me look up the definition of a mentor. A mentor is an experienced and trusted advisor. Someone's, as I said before, someone's going to point you in the right direction. Someone's going to give you advice. They're going to coach you. They're going to help you move forward. Next slide, Ralph. What is the role of a mentor? A mentor is going to share information about their own career path with their mentee or protege, obviously because they've been there before, and some mentors have been there and back, right? You're going to go up the ladder, but there's going to be a time where you're going to come down the ladder, right? So, you know, it is good to have somebody who's been there and back. They're there to give you guidance, motivation, emotional support, and also be a role model. A mentor may help with exploring career goals, developing contacts, and identifying resources. And in the refereeing game, that's what we want, right? We want to develop contacts. We want to identify resources, right? Our resources are what camps we should go to, what assigners we should get in front of. Where do we want to go as a referee, right? That's our career goals. Do we want to be a high school official? Do we want to be a college official? Where do we want to go with our refereeing career? And once you figure that out, that's kind of how you should look for your mentor, and try to be the best referee on that level of or whatever level that you decide you want to be. Next slide, Ralph. Reasons to have a mentor. A mentor is going to help you define and achieve your career goals as a basketball referee, and they're going to provide you with a certain level of accountability. Right, a mentor is not somebody you don't want a mentor that's just gonna, you know, watch your games, go to your games, see your plays, or answer your questions, and every time tell you, you know what, you're right. That call you made, you were right. That block charge call you made, you were right on that. You want a mentor who's gonna ask you questions and keep you accountable as to why you made that call. Your mentor will also help you expand your personal network. As I spoke about before, you know, pointing you in the direction of of what camps to go to, and what assigners to be in front of. They're also going to provide a new perspective for you, since your mentor, like I mentioned before, is usually more experienced than you are. Right? They've been to the level that you want to get to. So, those are the type of people you want to look for as a mentor. The next slide that we're going to talk about, Ralph, when you're ready, is the mentee. A mentee is somebody who is advised, trained, or counseled by a mentor, right? You have to want it, guys. If excuse me, if you want to get better, you have to be a mentee. You have to seek out a mentor and be willing to be advised, trained, or counseled. All right. Next slide, Ralph. The role of a mentee is someone who has identified a specific personal or professional goal, right? As referees, we all have a goal, whether you want to be the best high school official, the best CYO official, the best AAU official, or the best college official that you can be, right? That's your goal as a mentee. And your mentor is there to help you achieve that goal. And again, your mentor should keep you accountable and help you achieve your goal. Next slide, Rob. All right. So the mentor-mentee relationship, right? The picture we're seeing right now, we have the mentor going left and the mentee going right. Next slide, Ralph. Actually, can you go back? This isn't the road that we want. There was supposed to be another little pop-up there, but it didn't work. This isn't the road that we want as far as the mentee-mentor relationship, right? Next slide, Ralph. The mentor-mentor relationship is a two-way street, all right? As far as a mentee, you need to have clear objectives. You need to define your goals, right? Have a willingness to receive feedback, right? That's how we grow as officials. We receive feedback. That's why we go to camps. That's where we find mentors. Want to focus on that professional growth, right? We all want to grow as officials and get better. The mentor's role in this relationship is to coach, support, and help the mentee achieve their full potential. Great mentors will have empathy or be able to place oneself in the mentee's position. Next slide, Rob. So how do you find a mentor? There's a few ways, and I've listed a few ways here. Find someone you like. Let the relationship evolve. Don't check out when you feel challenged, right? Your mentor should be there to challenge you. Press into the relationship, which pretty much kind of follows up on, don't check out when you're challenged. Ask your mentor for feedback. Commit to the process. Now I'm gonna go into a little bit of detail on each. Next slide, Rob. So when you're looking for a mentor, you want to find somebody who has a set of similar strengths and skills as you do, and you want to emulate. All right. So spend some time finding the right person, and don't settle on one candidate. Look at a few people, especially in the world of refereeing. Next slide. As I mentioned before, right, your mentor is going to challenge you. All right. So don't check out when you feel challenged. The relationship with the mentor and mentee is going to be, it's organic. Don't force it. Let it grow like any other healthy relationship that you might have in your life. Next slide, Rob. Don't wait for your mentor to initiate. All right. Like I mentioned before, being mentored or being a mentee, it's a two-way street. All right. So you don't want to constantly have your mentor calling you to ask you, oh, how did your game go? Or, did you have any crazy plays in your game? Or how are your partners? You know what? I have a mentor, and just about every game that I left, I would get on the phone and I would call him, and then I would talk to him about plays, and then I would talk to him about my partners, and I would talk to him about the game. So don't let the mentor reach out to you. It's a two-way street. You have to reach out to the mentor as much as the mentor reaches out to you. Next slide, Rob. Feedback. That's how we grow as officials, all right? And you have to be able to take constructive criticism, all right? Your mentor is there to help you grow, all right? So if you have a play and your mentor sees it and your mentor feels like you got that play wrong, you have to listen and understand why you got that play wrong. So the next time you see that play or you have that play or a similar play, you won't get it wrong. Next slide, Rob. And commit to the process. If you don't commit, it's like I said before. Mentoring is a two-way street. If you're not giving as much as your mentor is giving you, then you're not going to be successful in the mentor-mentee relationship. Next slide, Rob. So all in all, my advice to you, next slide. Keep calm and get a mentor. It'll absolutely help you succeed in your refereeing career, no matter where you want to go. All right, next slide, Ralph. So now I know a lot of you are saying, how do I get a mentor? MAGBO has a wonderful mentoring program. You can contact our CEO, our controller, Kerry Donahue, for more information if you're looking for a mentor. MAGBO has plenty of veteran referees who are willing to give back and mentor young officials. myself, I think I lucked out. And Ralph, you want a little quick there? Myself, I lucked out. I looked into the mentoring program through MAGBO, and to this day, I still have my mentor Hassan Brown, which some of you may know, and he's awesome. He's come to my games. He's watched my games on the internet. I send him plays constantly, and you know what? We'll sit. I'll send him one play, and we'll be on the phone for 2 hours talking about that one play and breaking it down on how we can on you know, if I got it wrong, why I got it wrong. If I got it right, why I got it right. If it's a good play, if it's a bad play, and that's the mentor-mentee relationship. And next slide, Ralph. That's all, folks. That's all I got for you. I'm going to throw it over to Kerry. Hope you guys enjoyed my presentation. And again, get a mentor. If you don't have one and you want to move up and want to get better in this game, in this avocation, get a mentor.
Carl, I remember speaking to Hassan. He was willing to get involved and have a mentee, but he had parameters. And he wanted someone that was really going to take this serious. I'm not going to say over the airwaves what he said, but you know, he really wanted someone that really was not going to waste his time. And so
right.
I said
he wanted someone who was going to make it a two-way street.
Right. I do believe you've learned a lot from Hassan, and if you're out there, Hassan, we thank you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
If it wasn't for him, I really wouldn't be where I am right now. So thank you, Kerry.
I agree with that, Carl. I agree. And with that, Ashley Olsen is here to show us some plays about bench decorum and coaching box and things like that. This topic, I'm just waiting for Ralph to cue it up. This was another topic that people asked about. You really want to know a lot about how to enforce it. And so, Ashley, it's all yours. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Kerry. And thank you all for having me today. I really appreciate the time that you guys spent to get a little bit better. This also makes me better. So I thank you so much for having me. So coaches, right? Bench decorum. This is a big topic. It's been a big topic for the NCAA and for girls basketball for a while now, especially over the last decade. One of the biggest things about the women's basketball game, which is awesome, is that it is booming, and booming in a way that there's way more coverage than there has been in the past. No matter if you're at the AAU level in the summertime, if you do Division 1, 2, 3, JUCO, or even high school, anywhere in between, these games can be streamed over the internet. And this has not only helped the game grow for the women's side, for the players, for the coaches, for the officials, but it also brings about a lot of accountability too. And the rules committee is really concerned about the violations on the bench decorum rules. This is also something we can pregame. This is something that Sheri and Carl touched upon during their pregame about talking to coaches and sort of answering all the questions that they might have. And that's a big part of it too. But also they are given a box, right? They're giving a coaching box, and that box is very, very important. And the extension of this coaching box in the past couple of years has given the ability for the coaches to communicate a little bit better for their players that are on the other end of the floor. But when they do come out of this box, it does create a distinct advantage for them. And some of the coaches just completely disregard the coaching box, as you'll see in this one play. And this year, I tried to be a little bit better with enforcing this. This is something that I've always tried to get better. I sort of tend to empathize more, sympathize more with coaches because I was a coach, because I was a player. So I've always had sort of a longer leash, but that's for everybody. When it comes to the coaching box, though, there are rules for that, and we must implement those, and we have to have that so that we can have the appropriate and acceptable behavior from coaches, players within the game. So Ralph, you could go ahead and play this first one. You don't have to slow this one down. You'll notice for a considerable amount of time, and we actually zoom in on him standing in the corner. He is not the sixth man on the floor nor the center. That is the coach that's standing in the corner. And as you can see, there is no addressing of the coach at all. And that can happen. Things like this happen. Sometimes we don't see things, right? But what can we do to help in this case to actually address this? So as you can see the C, He might be able to see it in his periphery, but if he positioned himself a little bit lower and maybe had his heels on the actual sideline, he might be able to see him a little bit better. But this coach is clearly and completely out of the coaching box. And it doesn't really matter how long he's there. It's until we actually notice him, right? Because nobody else is going to make that call. So we have to make sure that if he does interfere with any of the players, then yes, there does have to be something that's done there. So he's just standing on the court, minding his own business, doesn't even know that he's probably standing on the court, or maybe he does. But this is something that we should address. We should warn him. This constitutes a warning to the coach when we do recognize that he's on the court clearly and completely. And so when we do this, we have to let him know that, I understand you're trying to I understand that you're trying to coach your team, but you have to stay within the box. This is your warning. And then we go and proceed. And if any of the clinicians have anything to say to add to that, that's perfectly fine. But this one is just a warning to the coach. He's not in the way of any of the players or the officials. He doesn't interfere with the play at all. So this one constitutes as a warning because there is no time. It's just when we recognize that he's on the court. And if anybody has any questions, please go right ahead. Feel free to put them in the box. Ralph, we could go to the next play if you'd like. And with this, I should say too, is that with this, I might even tell him to get off the court and then warn him once the play is dead, because this is something that has to be taken care of. And in the moment, if you do see him, you should tell him to get off the court for the time being and then warn him and let the crew know that you've warned him. And now we could go on to play 2. So this next one is a great play. This is actually probably constitutes more for the high school because our courts are smaller at the high school level. In some cases, in most cases, I should say, the coaching boxes are much smaller. So you have to make sure that to see what it is that is what the coaches are doing. And so you see here, we have a transition play. And you'll see the C stays put for the rebound. And then coach is clearly and completely out of the box. Now, in this case, she interferes with the official. Now, when you interfere with an official, when you are clearly and completely out of the box, that is an automatic technical foul. It is automatic. And because she has to now go around, the coach is now completely on the court, almost being a part of the play, and having to go around her, you must administer a technical foul when she interferes with the official, with the movement or the officiating of the official. So that is where you have to do an actual technical foul because she does interfere with the official. Does anybody have any questions on that?
Ashley, here's the question. So I think a lot of people are sitting out there wondering, okay, this is a video, this looks very clear, but why is it that there are times when people just refuse to call those technical fouls? Like, why isn't this happening at the lower levels?
I believe that it might be, I think sometimes when I was starting out, I was more so worried about, do I really know what I have to call in order to make the, so do I know the play, my rules correctly in order to adjudicate what it is that's happening, right? So I might not know how to make that call, right? So that is something that if a coach interferes with you and bumps into you, that is a technical foul automatically. You might even end up on the floor after this because you're running up the court and they get in the way. But also, I think it's hard to say, okay, when you actually have the play, air conditioning, when an official cannot make that call or doesn't make that call, it's really tough because now if it happens early on in the game, what are you going to do later in the game, right? You have to make sure that you can make those decisions right away. And why it doesn't happen, I believe, is because they might not know that the coaches, they might not even recognize that the coach is out of the box. I mean, you'll know it if you run into another official, if you run into the coach, but you might not even recognize it. And that's just being a part of, aware of the game, right? Being involved in the game, being engaged in the game. That's a piece of being an official, is being able to glance. You have to be able to glance at the bench at times. You have to make sure the clocks are good. So there are things that you have to do throughout the game in order to stay engaged and aware. And that's sometimes what happens. And that happens to me too. I'm just unaware that a coach might be violating the coaching box.
Hey, Carrie and Ashley, I'm just going to pipe in. You know, I think, you know, at every level, we all struggle with what do coaches do to cross the line and earn that automatic, right? We're in the, you know, we like to coddle. I like to say we like to coddle on the women's side much more than the men do. And I think it's one place where men's officials, and don't be too offended, but I'm going to say that men's officials do a better job of calling technical fouls on coaches. It's not personal, y'all. It's just enforcing the rules as written. And I think we put ourselves in a hole sometimes when we try to make it, you know, we're trying to coddle, we're trying to create this relationship when a coach has clearly come over the line. When they cross that line, and where that line is and where we define it is a little bit different for everyone, and I get that. But there are certain things that are clearly outside of what the rules state, which means if it was a travel, and I'm not saying the step that Scott called, but I'm saying the 4-step travel that is obvious to everyone in the arena, we're going to call that a travel. It's no different with bench decorum. When a coach is clearly outside of the box and yelling at us, there is no warning to be given. That's a technical foul. Okay. When a coach is outside of the box and they're coaching, they get one warning, and that's in the book too, and that's defendable. Okay. We let our partners know right away. But when there is egregious behavior going on, or they are interfering with us and where they are, and it creates a dangerous situation, okay, those things don't require warnings. Those things require technical fouls. And again, let's try to get out of we all want to have a good relationship and a good working relationship with every coach. Okay. I'm the first one to admit that. But guess what? There's some coaches that I don't have a great relationship with. It's just sometimes you're not going to create that real good working relationship. And that's okay. Okay. Because as long as we know that we have a job to do, and that's enforce the rules as written. Okay. And we're going to enforce it on Gino Auriemma down to and Muffet McGraw down to the 332nd coach in Division I, or whatever level that you work at, you're going to enforce that rule the same way. And when we do that, not only is it good for our partners and our crew and ourselves, it's good for the next crew and the next crew and the next crew. Because the last thing that a Chris Kelly wants to get is, you didn't call a technical foul on that coach that was outside the box, okay, and was yelling at you and clearly on the floor, okay? And then the next night, the coach does the same thing and they do enforce a technical foul. And then the coach says to Chris, well, why didn't they give me a foul? I did the same thing the other night and your crew didn't give me. And so it's not only about us and the 3 people or the 2 people that night you're with, it's also what you're doing is also creating, you know, for the next crew and the next crew and the next crew, a level playing field, and that they don't have to clean up the work that we should have done the night before. Okay, I hope that makes sense.
For sure.
Thanks, Joe.
Okay, you're welcome. But great job, Ashley. Great job, Ashley, going through that.
Thanks. We have one more from Ralph. This is the last one. All right, so we'll run that again. And so we have a strong call from the C on a rebounding foul displacement. And coach, you can see, is clearly out of the box. And he's also in unsporting behavior as well. And so in this play, what I want you to do is I want you to watch how the C conducts herself in this manner. So she has a strong call. And obviously the coach is not happy. And so when she does her actual mechanic, she sees him and then she gives him the stop sign. Now the stop sign is for, hey, this is enough. That's enough. I've had enough. Coach, this is your warning. All right. And she warns him on that. And so I believe this fits the play. Now you also see this is early on in the game. I know that we don't necessarily officiate time and score, but this is early on. We address this early on in a very professional manner, as she does. She does it right away too. She doesn't go report and then gives him the warning. She warns him right at the time of his offense, and then she continues to report to the table her foul. So what I want you to see here is she uses her mechanic of the stop sign in order to warn that coach and tell him, hey, that's enough, coach, that's your warning. Okay, and I'm not sure what she says, but it was probably something to that effect. But this is something that we can use when we have a coach that is obviously, because, you know, we all get plays that are different, but there's a quiet confidence, Carl, that's definitely alluded to before. She definitely has it, and you can see it in the way that she conducts herself for that warning. And if any of the clinicians have anything to say about this play, please go right ahead. If anyone has any questions, they can put them in the chat. Oh, sorry, go right ahead.
I was gonna say that's all I have to add is the quiet confidence. She was, you know, she didn't embarrass him. She put up the stop signal and she continued about her business.
Right, and the coach from,
just like Stephanie said.
Yeah, the coach from Syracuse is a very passionate coach, and so, you know, watching him on the sideline, he's very passionate. He's very gaudy. I love his glasses. He's always got like the nicest glasses on, and but he's, you know, he's that type of coach. He's a passionate coach, and that's the way he has his players play and how he coaches. So knowing that, probably from that official as well, she took care of him early, and so that they could have a good game throughout.
Actually, I think you're spot on. I think knowing the personnel is extremely important. Even at the high school level, I can still remember, and when I see coaches that I've had in the past, the personalities are the same as on the high school level to junior college, Division III, II, on up to Division I. They're going to be difficult coaches, but if you can address them in a manner that's professional and it's not demonstrative, she could have waited and given that warning. If she would have waited and given that warning when she was standing over there by him, I assure you that situation would have gone much differently. And we often talk about how to give the stop sign. You don't want to give the stop sign in someone's face, but she's so far away that it doesn't feel like it's being done in a demonstrative manner. And it's just an acknowledgement, hey, that's enough. And so being very mindful of that, she looks as if she's in control in this particular scenario, and he's clearly out of the box and his arms are flailing. So that's a warning.
Early in the game too. Take care of it early. Right? We're only a few minutes into the game on this play.
Yeah.
She left that slide, that coach is gonna be she left that slide, that coach is gonna be all over the court for the rest of the game.
Yeah. And it was a correct call. If you look at the play, the defender
absolutely
during the rebounding bumped the other player further, displaces, I'm sorry, I'm going to use the rule book terminology, displaces the rebounder, and that's a foul.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more, Steph. You hit it right on the head. That is something that that needs to be addressed early if we have a coach like that, and to do it in the right manner, because we don't want to set him off any more than he might already be. So I couldn't have said it better. And that's pretty much it for me. Thank you so much, Carrie, and thank you so much to everyone else. I appreciate the opportunity to speak to you all, and look forward to seeing you this season.
Thank you, Ashley. Great job as always. And now we have Joe. Vaszily is going to talk to us about a topic that was sent in at the last minute, interpreting the rule book into actionable steps and utilizing the performance guidelines rubric to break down film.
Yeah, Carrie, thanks. And I appreciate everybody hanging in tonight. It's been a great session so far. I will try not to keep everybody too much longer. You know, it was interesting when I was thinking about this topic and I saw it, I've probably read it about 15 different times trying to figure out how I wanted to talk about and break down the two things. You know, the first piece of this, interpreting the rule book into actionable steps. the first thing that immediately popped into my mind is, how do I break down the rule book in terms of, how do I read it and study it? And I know, we've had John Levinson on, and he's kind of shown us, how he, one of the ways of how he kind of breaks down the rule book in terms of reading it. For me, typically I read a rule and then I go to the case book and I read all the case plays that go along with it. And so I think that's part of how I break down the rule book, to kind of just reinforce, what I've read, so that I can see, in illustrations, how John is John actually writing these rules. And I think that's the best way for me to describe, an actionable step. Because if you try to read the rule book, kind of like the Bible, from the beginning to the end, you're going to get about a chapter in and you're going to be like, okay, I'm done, and so, the same way with the rule book, I think you've got to go back, you've got to find illustrations and ways to, bring to life what some of these rules are saying. And obviously we know, and I'm not saying one rule is more important than the other, but, just looking at rule 1, it's equipment and, kind of uniforms, and, this picture of the uniform this past season with 50 different bullet points on it, really just trying to understand, okay, what's really, this color has to be the same color, but undershirts they don't have to be, short sleeve undershirts don't have to be compression, but long sleeve undershirts have to be compression, all those kind of things. You'd be like, you really, I said to John after the first season, I said, you got a picture in this locker room. It happened to be where Stephanie and I, the first weekend of the season, you got a picture of a player with 50 bullet points on him. I mean, how are we supposed to enforce 50 bullet points? And so, we've laughed about it. But again, I think when you go back and forth from the rule book to case plays, and when something doesn't make sense and you can find that illustration for it, it really helps me break it down into an actionable step that brings the rule to life, so that I can really see, how it's being, played. One of the things somebody, in this piece that they asked, said, call consistency and sequencing of events. There are some rules that are specifically related to what we call, okay? And to me, that's rule 9 and 10. That's violations and fouls, okay? And that's primarily, what we put most of our whistles on. And so, kind of when you look at 9 and 10, right, we've really got to know the ins and outs. And that's why I've spent these last few years in MAGBO talking about legal guarding and screening, and really knowing word for word what those rules say. What is a legal defender? How do you establish? How do you maintain? Stephanie did an awesome job on screening, in terms of, how do you, when you set a legal screen on a moving opponent versus a stationary opponent, what are you allowed to do? Is a blind screen applicable to stationary, defenders or moving opponents? Okay, and all those kinds of things. That stuff should be rolling off our tongues, so that when we put our air in the whistle, and a coach says to me, "What did my player do wrong?" you are able to spit out that rule the way it's written, and that's when the coordinators like Chris Kelly and others and Fran, they can support you because you use rules back language to explain what you just put air in the whistle on. So when you call consistency, that's where 9 and 10 really come in, okay? And, as Scott alluded to and some have put it in the chat already, I believe that in our game, traveling has become the hardest play to call. And that's because, we have pre-dribble travels, we have post-dribble travels, and really finding that foot, and it's become an exercise. And we didn't have any in-person camps, but in these last 2 summers, I've spent a lot of time, just as I've watched games, just saying to myself, and I've said to people, when you come off the floor or you watch a game, just take a minute of that game, okay? Whether it's on video or it's live in person in a summer league or whatever it is, and just take 1 minute and say, every time a person in your primary catches the ball, say to yourself, right foot or left foot. That becomes, and that's how we train the brain, okay? And yes, is it easier to call traveling from here than it is live? Absolutely. And sometimes the faster our student athletes, they're getting faster and faster and quicker, and they can shuffle and shift that pivot foot ever so slightly. We have post players that catch, they reverse pivot away from the basket. Why are they reverse pivoting away from the basket? Really because they want to switch their pivot foot and get it on, whether if they're righty, they want it on the left, or lefty, they want it on the right. That's why they're reverse pivoting away from the basket. And it's so subtle sometimes that we don't even pick up on it, okay? But that's why having this thing in your head where knowing if a righty catches on the right or left, and lefty if they catch on the right or the left, it will help you in seeing some of these travels. We still may not call all of them. And again, it comes down to kind of consistency within our crew. And that's why it's so important at the beginning of a game is to establish and get those obvious travels. Okay. As you know, with as well as every other piece of the game that's important for us. Okay. You know, sequence of events was the other piece of this kind of first rule, actionable steps. You know, and I would just say sequencing events you know, to me is you know, we've got layered plays that happen in our game, you know, kind of, you know, reaction and chain reaction kind of things, you know, that happen, or, you know, whistle for a foul, and then we get extracurricular activity after the play, and then knowing how to adjudicate those things. And, you know, for lesser experienced officials, those become you know, you go into panic mode. And even veteran officials, when you got multiple layer plays, your head starts spinning in 1,000 directions. Yes, we have the monitor. We can go look at it. When you don't have a monitor, you know, the onus becomes on you and the crew, and it becomes that much harder. But taking your time and just knowing that, you know, you've got to kind of layer it out. What happened, and then what were the chain reactions? And now we've made the rule a lot simpler. You know, we basically are going to come out of almost any kind of layered play with either no free throws, or only one team shooting free throws. There are very few situations where we're going to be shooting multiple type free throws. You know, and so again, going back to kind of, you know, those equal gravity type plays, I believe it's in Rule 7, and all the stuff that's on Arbiter that John's posted, you know, kind of all those things will help you. You know, anything that John posts, you know, that's either kind of interpretations or rules kind of plays or sequences, you should print those things out and have them handy in your book, because you never know when they're going to come in handy. Okay. The other piece of, you know, this topic that was sent in was utilizing the performance guidelines rubric to break down game film and reflect or rate performance. Okay. You know, and every coordinator, I will tell you, you know, probably grades things a little bit differently. We generally in Division I have 4 categories: correct call, incorrect call. That's when we blow the whistle. And then no call incorrect and no call correct when we don't blow the whistle. Some supervisors will not give you credit on no call corrects because they don't know if you were lucky or you just actually thought about it and you didn't put air in the whistle. The NCAA grades our correct calls with out of bounds. You know, I don't particularly, unless it's really majorly obvious, when I'm grading myself, I don't necessarily grade out of bounds plays. I just think it takes too much time. But clearly, to me, the 3 things that are most important are the 2 categories: when we blow the whistle, call incorrect, call correct, and our no call incorrects when we don't blow the whistle and we should have. And I'll tell you this: I graded myself on the ACC championship game back in March. The most no call incorrects I have were on traveling, and there were at least 3 of them, and I think they were all pre-dribble travels. Okay, when we put air in the whistle in that game, I think we were in the mid-90s. Okay, and most games, I think you'll find when you put air in the whistle, because when we put air in the whistle, we're 100% sure, sometimes 150, sometimes 200% when we're coming out of our primary. But when we referee our primary strong, we get a lot of plays right. We get most plays right. Our percentages come down, and it's, you know, whatever you look at. You know, the NCAA tournament, we're 94, 95%. Most leagues were in the mid-90s. When you factor in on no call incorrects, we're down into the mid-80s. And again, a lot of that is around traveling and screening is kind of the 2 big areas where over the past years, we've gotten better, but where we still need to get better and improve. Okay. And so, you know, when you're looking at a rubric, you know, I would say to you, if you have the ability and you have video available, it's hard to watch a whole game and grade it. It takes time. I mean, when I was doing some grading over the summer, for a couple of camps that I worked, you know, I spent 2 to 2.5 hours on a game, you know, and it takes a while. You know, if you're going to do it right, give yourself the time and the window. You can't rush it. And I mean, I was doing a quarter at a time, and I was going back, and, you know, we got the ability to slow it down and kind of look at things. And if I have to look at something 5 times, I give you the benefit of the doubt. I give myself the benefit of the doubt. You know, but seeing it in real time And you know, that's to me where we've got to grade ourselves. And again, like I said, if you got to watch it 5 times in slow motion, same with traveling, 5 times in slow motion to find out where she ended the dribble. We talked a lot about traveling tonight, where she, you know, our rule book is the pivot foot is when she ends her dribble. So where does she end the dribble? It's, you know, it's not the gather. That's in another league. There's no 0 step. That's in the pros. Maybe someday we'll have it. I hope, honestly, we do. But for the time being, we got to find the pivot foot when she ends her dribble. It's very simple. Just know the rule, okay? And that's where we will get those post dribbles right. The pre-dribble travels, to me, you know, split steps, going before you put the ball down. Those are, if you find the foot, you'll get them right. I guarantee you. Where she ends those dribbles, especially in the lane area where there's a lot of congestion, a lot of people, sometimes it's hard. And again, if you got to slow it down 4 or 5 times, the player gets the benefit of the doubt. And I think every coordinator in the country will agree with you on that. So, you know, that being said, I'll end there on terms of kind of going through that topic. But if anybody has questions, please put it in. I just had a question: when you're in season, are you watching full games in review, especially when you have to quick turnaround? The answer is no. There are games where I will watch more than others. Close games, 8 to 10 point games, critical plays at the end of a game, close games where we had a call or no call. That stuff we look at right away in the locker room before we even leave, like that illegal screen. That coordinator had the play before we even left the locker room. Okay. You know, if I'm flying out, you know, some of it will depend on travel. And if I'm flying the next night, or if I'm flying that night or flying the next day, you know, kind of will, again, give me some time to look at some stuff. So in season, it's very hard to watch a full game unless I feel like, and there was a game this season in December where I watched the whole game. I watched half of it that afternoon in the airport, you know, because I just didn't think we were very good. And your gut will tell you when you're good, when you're okay, and when you're not very good. And those days when the crew is not very good and on the same page, you owe it to yourself, the crew, and the student athletes, and your coordinator, and the coaches of those 2 teams to break that game film down and see where we needed to do better. Because your gut usually doesn't tell you, your gut usually doesn't lie. Now, I will tell you this, that it's never as bad as you think it is. Because it wasn't as bad as I thought it was, but we still weren't very good. Okay, so your gut's not going to lie completely, but there are nights where we're just not very good. Okay, and it's sometimes the game dictates that, and those are the hard games, and we just got to work extra hard and really break the game down into short segments. You know, but you owe it, like I said, you owe it to all the constituents in that game and the crews that follow you to break that game film down. So. Any other? Oh, you're welcome, Ashley. Any other questions before I move on? Ralph, we'll try to go through this as quickly as possible because it is bumping up against 9 o'clock. You know, and I'll just spend a little bit of time talking about the RA. And for those of you who are aspiring to the college, we have a 4-foot restricted area. Thankfully, it's the same one as the men. We don't have 2 lines anymore. Back in the day, and I think in this first play, this Pittsburgh play that I had, you'll notice that actually I think that it was the first year where we didn't have the 2 lines. We're back to the 1 line. So you will find your rule references for the RA in Rule 10 under guarding, okay, and that's on page 89 in the rule book, Article 7. And then you have 429, and I'll give you the page. And there's just some rule numbers that you just memorize. 429 is on page 52, and that's secondary defender, okay? There's 2 components to the restricted area. It's obviously knowing whether it's a primary or secondary defender. If it's a primary defender, there is no restricted area. The restricted area has to do with secondary defenders. That's one piece. And the second piece is whether or not the offensive player starts inside the lower defensive box or out. And if Ralph has his cursor, he can show us the 2 tick marks on the baseline, which are, as you can see them, those are, there you go. Thank you, Ralph. Those are the tick marks to denote where the restricted area, where the lower defensive box starts. And then our second lane space, the second line there, the second thin line, Ralph, just where the ACC, the top of the C is. There you go. Nope, over here. One more down. That second lane space line, the white mark. There you go, right there. So inside there and inside the tick marks on the end line to denote the lower defensive box. So drives that start outside, where this one starts right here on center side, is a drive that starts outside the lower defensive box, which means the restricted area is in play. That secondary defender who's coming over to help to take a charge, as you see there, her heels are on the restricted area, which means that as much as I would love to call a charging foul since she runs her over, she's in the restricted area and she cannot play. She cannot be a secondary defender in the restricted area, so this is a block. What's neat about this play is it illustrates two things from our camp teaching. Well, one from our camp teaching points. I've been in there the last couple of years. Is that even though the drive starts on the center side, when the secondary defender comes from the lead's primary, we want the lead to have first crack at this. Now, I need to get my arm up in the air to denote that this is a blocking foul and then point to the restricted area. Sometimes I have a bad habit of calling a block immediately. Now, my supervisor gave me the benefit of the doubt because the ball was about to hit me. And so I went to catch it before I put my arm up. But the reality is I probably wasn't putting my arm up anyway. I was calling a block and in the restricted area. If you look at my positioning, I'm off the end line, which I've said many times over. When you have the space to get off the end line, you're going to get these plays right. If I'm on the end line as lead and in that same position, but 3 steps forward, I may not get that right because I don't have that lane of vision and really that depth perception to not only referee her, but referee her feet. The neat part about this, just lastly, this is at 119 in the fourth quarter in a 3-point game. And this is one of those plays they put in that in the last 2 minutes, we are able to review RA plays. Now I was 99.9% sure she was in the restricted area. She was down on the floor for a minute because she hit her head. So I used that time to go and confirm that she was in the restricted area. And she was. And so that's the beauty of in the last 2 minutes, having a monitor, you are able to review these plays. And you're able to change them if she was not in the restricted area. You cannot re-referee the play. You can only re-referee. You cannot re-referee whether it's a block or a charge. You can only referee the location of the defender and the location of the offensive player in where she started the drive. Because I called a restricted area block. And so the only way I'd be able to change this to a charge is if her feet were outside the restricted area, because I didn't call. Now, if I had called a block, straight up block, you cannot review it. You can only review it if I had called a restricted area block, or if I called a charge, I could go and see that her feet were in the restricted area, and then we would change the charge to we would change the charging foul to a restricted area block. Okay, next one, Ralph. I'm sorry I'm going a little bit over here. I appreciate everyone that's hanging in there. It will be no more than 5 more minutes. And again, another demonstrative restricted area block. And I think I had this one. Oh, no, I didn't. I actually had another view from the baseline, but I didn't send that one to Ralph. And again, another run over play, but you can see where White starts to drive. She's already way out there. So the lower defensive, she's clearly outside the lower defensive box. And again, our secondary defender steps in and she slides over and her feet are on the restricted area on the arc. And again, not a difficult call, but again, I'm trying to get myself in good position there to back off the end line and get a little wide. And I think if I had stayed where I was, kind of pinched the paint, I might have been closed off by 23 Blue, who was also standing right there. And she may have blocked my view from seeing that defender. So again, try to get off the end line. And remember, she was on the left side coming up the floor. So I adjusted quickly to get wider and just wide enough to see where her feet were. All right, Ralph, next one. Two more. This was a great play I had, and this is when we had the two lines. And it was and again, you can see that I called the charge. I didn't pick up her feet. Now you see the center walking in, who has a great look at the defender's feet, the help defender. And again, this is another play where the drive starts clearly from outside the lower defensive box. And again, on the restricted area, she's coming in. She sets up late. This happened to be the same defender in the last play, the Louisville play. She had a tendency to like to take charges, but not get out of the restricted area. So again, but this is a great example of a play where when the center's engaged and there's a lot of traffic in there, and I got to tell you, I'm probably not in the best position there. I'm kind of pinched the paint. Because again, it was on the weak side coming over, and I just didn't position adjust in time. But there are 4 defenders there for blue, and sometimes it's hard to find the feet, and that's why when we get help from the outside, we say thank you very much for finding those feet. And she came in right away. She came in and gave the information. 21 Blues feet were on the line. We're on the restricted area, and I made and then I make the change, and I change the card, blow my whistle. After she gives me the information, and I put my fist up, call a blocking foul, I point down to the ground for the restricted area, and then we go from there. So yes, Sheri, this call was changed from a charge to a restricted area block. You're welcome. All right, Ralph, last one. And this was from just this was in February, actually, in a 2-point game in the 4th quarter. And again, once again, I don't get my arms up. Ralph's going to run it in slow motion. Clearly, again, starts way outside the lower defensive box. Here comes help side defender, number 2. And you'll see that her feet are clearly inside the restricted area. And Cameron is doing a great job in trail, kind of walking down towards the play. Because the center, I think, there's too many bodies in there for the center to have a real good look. Cameron actually had a good look. And again, if I had the baseline angle, I would show you. As I'm walking to the table, Cameron's already nodding her head. And I knew she was in the restricted area, so I didn't need to go and look at this. But again, this would be another play, 44.5 in the 4th quarter, where we could go look at this type of play if we needed to, because it's in the last 2 minutes of the 4th period. If we needed to, we could go and look at the monitor. But we did not need to go to look at the monitor because I was 150% sure that she was in the restricted area. So. And as Carl wrote in the chat, great, and I'm glad he said that, in, on, or over the RA is illegal, and that's been a test question on our preseason test for the last, I don't know how many years. John always liked to sneak in the over. And so, again, for those aspiring to the college level, the restricted area is, we're getting more and more players who are trying to take charges. We've got to find the foot, we got to find the feet on secondary defender. We got to referee the legality of the play. But as you're finding the defender's feet and whether they're established prior to a player going airborne, you also need to find their feet when the plays are around the basket.
So Joe, question. Even though you're 150%,
yeah, Sheri.
Even though you're 150% sure that she was in the ARC or the RA, if a coach asked you to review that within the 2 minutes, do you have to go to the monitor, or can you?
Oh, there's Ralph. Oh, Ralph, you ran it to the end there, right? Yeah, that's good, Ralph, because that showed that baseline. I'll share. I'll get to you in a second. I'm sorry. Ralph's got the baseline look here too on this play. Yeah, Sheri, I would just say this. You know, my response always on these types of plays is, you know, coaches can ask us to review certain things, and if they're wrong, they lose the timeout. You know, if I'm 250%, if I'm 150% sure, my first reaction or my first response to a coach, depending on the rapport I have with them, is, Coach, I am 150% sure she was in the restricted area. And on a play like that, where it's not even, her feet aren't even on the line, they're actually both inside the line there. These are types of plays where I'm really going to be fairly, I don't want to say stern, but I'm going to be confident in how I respond to a coach. If I have any doubt in my mind, or my partners do, well, then by all means, that's what the monitor is for. It's used to be a tool. You know, but certain types of things like this, for me, you know, I think when we go to the monitor, we just slow the game down. And I think, you know, in the interest of, you know, we want our game to have pace and we want it to flow. And I think even a coach like that, he's going to look up, he or she's going to look up at the monitor in an arena like that and see the replay and know that his or her player was in the restricted area, and they're not going to ask.
Okay.
So, but it's a great question. You know, and like I said, if you have any doubt, the monitor is there for us as a tool on these types of plays. Because the other flip side of that is the coach who didn't, you know, the coach at the other end is saying, are you going to charge them a timeout? Are you charging them a timeout? And then you got to be quick with your response and say, no, coach, I'm going on my own volition. You know, or coach, I had doubt. That's why I'm going to look. Because it looks bad for us when a coach asks us to look at something and then we go look and they're wrong and we don't charge them a timeout. How are you going to respond to the other coach? Are you charging them a timeout? Oh no, coach, I went on my own volition. Well, then why did you wait for them to ask you, right? So you got to be sensitive to that, and that's where your partners can really come in and help you on, you know, whether or not you should use the monitor as a tool in certain situations. So. Any last questions on that before I hand it back to Carrie to wrap it up?
Thanks, Kevin. Joe, another great job by you.
By everyone. Thanks, Carrie. And by Ralph, too. Hands up, big shout out for Ralph. Awesome job with the clips.
So I just have a couple of quick comments. I know it's getting late. Just a few things that are coming up. MAGBO is still having the ref training course with Carl Small. We're working on the details. We'll send out the pre-registration form as soon as we figure out all those details. We're also sponsoring.
Awesome.
The NASO Summit is coming. It's free. I put the link in the chat. Okay, so you should register for it. MAGBO is having a virtual table there, and also you may enter for a chance to win a MAGBO prize package. Very exciting. I also put the link for the evaluation form, and those of you that officially registered, I'll get that link out to you. It's coming by email, but you can click on that link and tell us what we did well and how we can improve, because believe me, we read these and we're listening to you. Thank you to all our participants. We really appreciate you staying on. It's definitely worthwhile. We enjoy helping you as much as we can. And we're going to have our next session in September, date to be determined, with our core clinicians. And thank you especially to Joe, Stephanie, Scott, Ashley, Sheri, Carl, and last but not least, Ralph. Thank you, everyone. Stay safe, and we'll see you in September.
See you, Carrie.
Great job, everybody. Good job,
Bye,
Carrie.
everybody.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good
job.
seeing
Have a good day.
everybody.